Hello and a very warm welcome to all the viewers of dtalks, that is, Disruptive Literacy Talks. And this is Tanna Prakash, your host of the session. dtalks aims at coming together in eradicating illiteracy and focusing upon foundational literacy and numeracy, as committed under the Sustainable Development Goal 4 and in India's national education policy as well. dtalks is an initiative of Global Dream, a disruptive movement for universal foundational literacy and numeracy, that is, FLN. It was launched in 2014 by Dr. Sunita Gandhi, educationist and former economist at the World Bank. By using disruptive and research based methods and processes, Global Dream aims to make India 100% literate in a time bound mission. And moreover, we believe in disrupting the status quo when best is not the enough. Moving on to today's session, it will be based on reimaging the education. With this, I would like to introduce you with the speaker of the session, Mr. Joseph Effiong, World Literacy Foundation Ambassador and founder of Be Exceptional, who will be speaking upon the topic reimaging the education for a more resilient and equal society. Joseph Effiong is the founder of Be Exceptional, a solution for raising the next generation of teachers. It was established as a response to the global lockdown of schools during the 2020 COVID 19 outbreak. It initially ensures learning never stops even with the global lockdown. Teachers and students drawn from College of Education and the faculties of education gathered at the Facebook platform to learn while schools were under keys. Beyond the lockdown, Be Exceptional aims to raise the next generation of influential teachers who will be locally productive and globally relevant. The network unbundles the tradition competition among the teachers to allow for collaboration and strengthen the cause of teachers and schools by providing the opportunity for all to learn, support, and share together. Using the Be Exceptional network, he is working currently running a mission to empower 10,000 teachers for educational skills. We at dtalks are highly glad to have Mr. Joseph with us. Welcome, sir. Welcome to dtalks.
Thank you so very much, Danny Prakash. Thank you so very much. I am super delighted to be on this disruptive talk session. Thank you so very much.
So, sir, before moving towards the session, the organization of which you are a founder of, Be Exceptional, the name is so very interesting that we want to know more about it. The things which I told to you to the audience and which I know is that what we know about you. But there is something very interesting about you which only you can tell us.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much, Danny Prakash, for this opportunity. Um, I started my career from a village school, and it was in a classroom made of thatch. I had just the pupils practice without any form of pre-service training. I was left without any form of pre-service coaching, no scheme of work, no proper guidance to be in the classroom. That was the beginning of my classroom. That was the origination of my teaching career. So this exposure, this experience gave me first-hand details, first-hand inequality gap about several teachers who are practicing their teaching in the local communities, in the low-income communities. So when I grew, I began to grow in my teaching career. I, I attend qualifications and trainings. I had to fall back. I had to reflect on my past, and I realized that a lot of teachers are lacking this basic information. A lot of teachers are lacking competence in delivering quality education. And I also understand that quality education is synonymous with quality teachers. So during the pandemic, I realized that my role as a teacher is not just about teaching my students, as a relationship with my students. So when I interacted with my students in the College of Education, I realized that was boring. It was actually the holiday was boring, and everybody were actually so confused during the lockdown. So I decided to engage them, and I speak to them. What if we can gather on Facebook? Won't you want to learn something? So from that interaction, because I realized that the Chinese word for crisis is translated as danger and opportunities. I realized that there was danger. I also look at what could be the opportunity out of this crisis. So I realized that, okay, we can use technology. So that was how the Be Exceptional Network started. So the Be Exceptional Network was a platform, was a response to be able to provide a learning platform for our teaming learners who were at home, who were totally confused, who were bored. So we set up a platform on Facebook. It initially started on Facebook. So before you know, we had a whole lot of, currently we can pride ourselves of about 1,000 plus membership on Facebook. And what did we do? We tried to engage stakeholders in the education sector. We try to engage coaches, engage trainers, and we ensured that during the lockdown, there was quality learning. And I can tell you that even after the lockdown, we have not stopped there. We saw that, okay, what do we do coming out of the lockdown? There is a new normal which centers on technology. And when you look at teachers from the low-income communities, there is this digital gap. There is this digital divide. So I decided to ensure that using my network, using the Be Exceptional network, I recruited volunteers. I picked some thought leaders, some tech-savvy educators, and we decided to set up a structure. We have a goal. We set up a goal to train 10,000 educators on how to integrate technology into their classrooms. And I can tell you, the feedbacks have been so amazing. Right from the day we started, from the month we started, we've been able to train over 100 plus educators using various tech tools that would enable them to thrive in the whole new normal. So basically, I was looking at the inequality gap in the educational sector. So what we do basically is to understand, okay, how do we position the next generation of teachers to thrive in the future? So we understand that, okay, if you go to like law have what we call mentorship. In the law profession, they have mentorship. So we decided to ensure that in the teaching profession, we bring these young learners selected from the colleges of education and that will represent gather them. So when we gather them, we now attach them to different mentors. And we do this not considering any financial gain, not looking at any monetary value. We do this because we understand that coming out of COVID, I think teachers had suffered a whole lot of pains. So what we are trying to do is a response towards ensuring that teachers stand for each other. Teachers live away that old tradition of competitiveness to a 21st century collaborative spirit where whatever I know, I share, I come together and see how we can chart a new future and see how we can chart a new path for the future of education and that of our society. Because I believe teachers hold the development of every society. So basically what we do is to ensure that we raise the next generation of influential teachers that will be locally productive. When we say locally productive, I am one person that is against that popular maxim that says that teachers' rewards are in heaven. I believe that if I sow here on earth, I should be able to get my reward here on earth. So, for example, I have these qualities of honesty, these qualities of integrity, and I know I am planting them. So I should be able to get my reward here on earth. So I should bring out best practice and engage these young learners while they are in their school, while they are preparing, so that when they classroom. So that's basically what we do in the Be Exceptional Network. Thank you so much, Tam Prakash.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the information and your experience of Be Exceptional and your work within the global pandemic, where everyone was stuck into their homes and wanted to continue with their work. Before moving ahead with this session, sir, I would like to say that I think there is some network issue on your side because we can't like hear you in between.
Oh, of
Yes.
course, that's what I was. I was. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's perfect right now. Luckily, it's perfect right now.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's basically what I was trying to say.
No,
So
we
I think we
heard
are good.
everything. We heard everything, but in between, like your screen got stuck.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry.
No worries, sir. And
Okay.
it's like it's very good to hear you hear things from you. And you were about to share a few things with us. So before moving, I would like to we would like to see that, and then we'll continue the session with some discussions and questions.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I would like to share my screen, and I'll quickly do that as fast as I can. So I'd like to share my screen on the topic at hand. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. But right now we
Okay.
can see a thank you slide.
Yes, I think we'll start from reimagining education for a more resilient future. Okay, so now there was a time before now, before the outbreak of the pandemic, we had the Black Death killed over 200 million people across Europe, Africa, Asia, and in its 7 year terror, within 7 years, over 200 million people lost their life. And we also have the Spanish flu, which was otherwise known as influenza, killing over 100 million people. We wouldn't even talk about the plague of Justinian, who took away a whooping 25 million people. As if that was not okay. HIV and AIDS took out a whooping 35 million people. Now we look at all this pandemic, we look at all these disasters, we look at all these crises, none of them can be compared to the damages of the coronavirus. So you find out that even the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres had to describe the pandemic as having led to the largest disruption of education in history. What that means is that there has never been a time education has suffered to the fact
Uh,
that
Sir, I'm sorry. I
this
would like to interrupt in between. I'm very sorry for that. It would be great if you could present the PPT on a full screen mode.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, okay. Can you just mute me? Let me work on something.
sure, sir, sure.
Okay.
In the meanwhile, sir is presenting the PPT on a full screen mode and getting back with us. Uh, I would like to ask all the audience that you can ask your questions, share your thoughts, share your ideas on the comment section of Facebook as well as YouTube. So you can try to press Control plus F so that the screen could go full screen.
Working on that.
Or if it's not going, so it's okay. We can like go with the same presentation on the half screen mode also.
I'm on it now. I'm on it now.
So it's okay. You can present it now.
Okay, okay. Please, you just have to um, 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 endure with me. Okay, so I was saying that never in the history of mankind, never in the history of humanity have we seen this kind of crisis against education. So this leaves us with a greater challenge. This leaves us with a very bigger challenge. So you could agree with us that even the government, teachers, our schools, our institutions were unprepared. We were not ready for such a crisis. So though we understood that there were things were fast changing, but when COVID-19 it broke in, it all took us by storm. So and we understand that the emergency it gave, it further exacerbated the existing crisis. Already before now, we had a lot of crises. We had the learning crisis. We had the climate change. So they were all around there. So, but now this exposure, this crisis, this emergency was able to expose the unpreparedness of even developed countries, right? It was able to expose our educational system. It was able to expose our health institution and even economies. So you understand that this gave us a bigger question mark of having had to answer questions like how do we recover from this convergent crisis? How do we recover from this crisis? So that becomes the bigger questions that is left for every stakeholders in the educational sector to answer. So now, when we look at crisis, the Chinese word or meaning for crisis is derived from two words, which means danger and opportunity. So you understand that the coronavirus was able to bring about danger first. Everybody was shocked. Everybody were, since we were not prepared, we were shocked. We there was trauma. There was a lot of depression. People were dying. There was hunger. So people were not prepared. So everybody was shocked. And when you look at a situation where over 1 billion children, students were left out of schools and they did not even know when the schools were resuming. So there was shock in the land. So when you look at a situation where the female children had to drop out of schools because the problem of teenage pregnancy were coming out because they were no longer in schools. So when you look at that, there was heightened learning loss because our children were away from school, and that as a result, communities could not access technology, could not go for digital learning. So the inequality gap was widened, and children who relied on our school system for feeding could not have access to food. So and teachers themselves even had to battle, even parents would even have to battle with the transitioning to digitalization. So there was a whole lot of danger, there was a whole lot of problem. So inside that problem, there were opportunities. Now, the opportunities was how do we then build capacity through learning new things? How do we then build capacities? How do we as teachers upskill? How do we reskill? How do we evaluate ourselves? How do we give our time? ourselves time to be able to reimagine the things we have been doing, to re-examine our practices and skills. Now, how do we also return humanity to its base? Finally, the opportunity it presented to us was for us to come back to the drawing board. How do we reimagine education? Which is actually the topic of our discussion. So, reimagining education, we look at the key concepts. Reimagine. Simply, it means to recreate. And education means to lead out. So we look at resilience. Resilience is the capacity to bounce back from adversities. So how do we bounce back? How do we come out of this situation stronger and better? This is how we are going to reimagine education. Now, looking at the situation, looking at our classrooms before now, we understand that our learning content and a school system was playing the catch-up system. They were playing the catch-up. So a lot of our curriculum content were stale. So it now behoves on us as educators, as stakeholders, to be able to ask ourselves the real questions. And these questions forms the recommendations. Number one, in reimagining education, we must ensure that every learner is personalized in his learning content. That's how I put it. It's a personalized learning system that leads out of the individual, her passions and aspirations. So you understand that education, the origin of commercializing education was not actually to lead out to lead education out of the learner, to lead the passions, the potentials of the learner out of itself. Education was structured in such a way that we, in the Nigerian context, were supposed to fill up certain workforce that were presented by our colonial masters. So in looking at education once again, we need to understand that the learner is the center of focus. We need to also make sure that all the learning content is able to reflect, one, the interest of the learners. It must be able to bring out that hidden potentials in the learner. That is how we can personalize education. That is how we can personalize learning. So we also look at who are the givers of education. And that brings us to the number two way of reimagining education, which talks about reprioritizing teacher education and financing. Take, for instance, Nigeria. The United Nations has earmarked 25% for every country on the allocation of its budgetary, on the education budgetary allocations. But if you come to a country like Nigeria, you have not up to 10%. We are battling with just 5 to 6% for education. And the question is, how do we grow when we are having these minimal funds being voted for education? Not even half of that deadline as kept by the United Nations. So that is a problem on its own. So we need to look at, okay, if we are honest, if we are sincere about development, then we need to also look at who are the people that we are enrolling into our teacher education systems, like our colleges of education and faculty of education. If you look at Nigeria, for instance, the benchmark for enrollment into the teacher training institutes and faculties of education is absolutely so poor. Poor in the sense that they cannot go head to head with their law counterpart, with students in the medical field. So we need to understand, if we value education, if you're looking at education as that which will bring holistic development, then the teacher education has to be prioritized. So that takes us to number 3. Now, the number 3 talks about gradual transitioning from the box classroom to a practical-based center where the active learning takes place. What that means is this. Over the years, we have seen a classroom system that limits the learners into a box. Even while there is a popular adage that says we need to think about out of the box, but I still see a practice that students and teachers are allowed to remain in the four walls of the classroom. I still see it as a limitation. So we need to begin to transition. We need to begin to remodel our classroom in such a way that it should not be just a box. Children, classrooms can be, for example, classrooms should take a carpentry workshop. If children are learning, for example, photography, you should have a photography studio where children would be exposed to the actual learning, not basically a box where they will be learning theories and regurgitation of theories. So the number 4 recommendations in reimagining education is about the assessment. I look at a situation where we've had a standardized form of assessment over time. So I said, if assessment should value student outcome and actions, not that it has to be measured, we should look at how is the outcome of this learner. Is he growing? We ensure that he is developing according to his pace. We should not use a one-size-fits-all approach to be able to evaluate our learners. Learners should be made to compete with his or herself. We should disband that traditional competition where learners would have to compete with everybody. And so for me, this is the critical question we should look at when we are going into the future. So that takes us into the next way of reimagining education, which is raising communities of purpose-driven educators like the Be Exceptional Network. We need to begin to look at teachers who are purpose-driven. We need to begin to look at teachers who are not after their pocket, but after purpose. It is purpose that will bring fulfillment. It is purpose that would enable every teacher to understand that his work is to give value, his work is to create impact. So away from that, it is now on us as schools, as teachers and curriculum to be able to develop curriculum, to develop content that is current, that is concurrent with the current expectation of the workforce. So I said that schools, teachers, and curriculum must be current enough to prepare the learner for the workforce and the future. So, for example, we are trying to catch up. All our learning content is trying to catch up with the present realities. So we need to be able to tell ourselves the raw truth that if we are to be true to ourselves, then whatever we teach the learners must be able to face the real life situations. So whatever the learners are going to learn must be able to reflect what they are going to face in the world of work. So now, looking at reimagining education, we need to understand that never in the history of the world has there been such crises. And that brings us to the skill called resilience. How do we teach our children resilience? What is the place of resilience in the future? We need to imbibe into every learner and at a very tender age, at an early stage. Learners must be made to understand that there is a future, and the future, there would be crises, there will be uncertainties, and that they need to bounce back. It is normal to fail. It is normal to make mistakes. Then in your mistake, you must be willing to come out stronger. So learners must be taught to embrace failure. They must be taught to see mistake as a normal part of life. So, in this way, we will be able to be sure that the future we are going into will be such that the teachers and the learners will be able to collaborate in order to give us the future we are so looking for. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I am very, very sure and definite that the future is ours to take responsibility and begin to take action. Thank you while I am waiting for your questions. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And before moving on with the session, the thing which I like that you said that we need to train the kids and the children at a very early age, so that that is their developmental age, and they can learn and uh, learn new things many more easily.
That's true. Yes.
Yes, sir. And sir, as
Yes.
we are talking about global pandemic and global lockdown. So many of the schools started online teaching. They shifted their offline classroom mode to the online classroom mode. And be it any part of the world, we sometimes face some infrastructural barriers where we do not have proper internet connections. And in that case, how should one tackle? How should people, or how should the educational institutions or the organizations working in the field of education and literacy should focus on eradicating this problem, so that learners could come more easily on the online platform of education?
Okay, I think I would want to say that basically from my experience, during the lockdown, I realized that there was that digital divide. So what we did first was first we needed to understand, we needed to look inward and try to look at what we have, because sometimes if you don't see what you want, you make use of what you have. So we needed to look at what we have. Now we understood that in the local communities, the town crier system was allowed. So what we did was going round streets with our COVID regulations, with our public address system. So we were able to disseminate information. We were able to teach at a larger scale where children sit down at their homes to access learning. And another thing we were also able to do, which I didn't actually include in my slide, I was supposed to have done, so was that we ensured that every evening, twice or thrice a week, we ensured that at evening we used to use a projector where we visually screen learning content. So children would just sit down in a designated at their home. So when we are in a designated location, we display the screen in such a way that while they are sitting down at their homes, they were able to access learning visually, and they were able to also assess, the parents were also able to assess, because there was a time we were having issues because we actually use the WhatsApp platform in learning because of the parents we have in our areas, because I'm actually working with people from low income communities. So we decided to teach this using a visual aid. What we wanted them to do on our WhatsApp platform, we would take time to explain them using 30 minutes, 1 hour with a projector and a laptop and a public address system, so they were able to adapt gradually. So that is basically how we were able to mitigate during the pandemic.
Yes, sir. And sir, if we talk about the pandemic, so that has affected the education a lot. I was reading
Yes.
once that 1.5 year of online education has affected the education this much, that the education has went 3 years back.
That's
So what are your views on the same?
yes. Like I said before in my slide, before now there were crises. There were climate crises. There was even this learning crisis where not just in school were able to improve in the literacy level. So there were crises. So now looking at the situation now, COVID-19 has exacerbated the crisis. So the question of how do we mitigate, how do we address the situation is the fact that even the World Bank had said that if remedial measures are not taken, that this crisis will continue for
Hello. So are you able to hear us?
in the future. Pay more attention, government have to pay more attention into prioritizing education, right? And individuals must seek to partner, just like what the disruptive talk is doing, gathering stakeholders, reaching out to change makers, getting their views. So we need to come together. Humanity needs to return back to its basis. We need to understand that I am because you are. We need to reach out towards ensuring that we are more empathetic, because the future will require that we show more empathy to be able to lift ourselves out of this crisis. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. And sir, as we are talking about the global pandemic, so the lack where the children have to now shift towards the online mode, the lack of resources has led to dropout of many children, especially after this pandemic. So, what could be the possible solutions? What could be the possible ways to bring them back to educating them, to bring them back to schools, because schools have right now seeing many dropouts due to the lack of resources.
Oh, yes, yes, it's actually a very serious problem, and it's actually a very serious crisis, like I said, to the education system. First, I see teaching as being relational. Teachers have a whole lot of role to play here, because this is how I'm saying it. Every child who comes to the school system is coming with a backload of challenges. It's coming with a lot of challenges. So it is upon the teacher to ensure that first, before the government policies come in, it is the teacher that is at the center. It is the teacher that would have a lot of work to do. It is a teacher that would have to reach out to such children, reach out, even if it were not your children, it is your duty to reach out, to be able, because like I said earlier, we need each other now. All of us, the whole world is actually in a confused state. So it needs more change makers. There is a call for teacher leaders, a call for teachers to take action. Everybody must be involved. And also, I want to also say that other companies like Dell, I think I've seen some technology companies right now. My son has Bonvita Tech Bootcamp. Bonvita, the normal food drink we have in Nigeria here, is organizing a training for young children. And as I speak, my son was also selected. So companies, institutions, bigger institutions must be able to reach out, must be able to show capacity, so that we will be able to save our future. So, like I said earlier, humanity had to return to its basis. And the base of humanity is when I understand that I am because you are. Reaching out to help each one another is actually the way out of this situation. Thank you.
Sorry, I was on
You
mute.
have,
Yeah, I was on
yes,
mute.
I saw that.
Uh,
Yeah.
so, sir, as we are talking about reimagining the education system, where there is an equality amongst each other. So, what roles can the different stakeholder play for this change?
Awesome. The different stakeholders, starting from first the government. We had the G7 where education leaders all on education. You see, government itself has to be true to funding education. I take for instance in Nigeria, you see that the government of Nigeria prioritizes other sectors than education. And I used to ask one thing. Right from when we were small, you hear things like education is the bedrock of development. If truly education is the bedrock of development, then education should receive the highest budgetary allocation, because we understand that this is where we reprioritize. Education has to be funded. And I also want to say this. You see, the teacher's well-being is also a subject of concern. Teachers' remuneration. Teachers are underpaid. Teachers are undervalued. Teachers are generally underpriced. Take, for instance, like Nigeria. It is very difficult for you to convince a young person to come into the teaching profession, because he will always tell you that teachers are not well paid. And he will always tell you that um, all the teachers he has seen are just average people in the society. So we need to have, yes, we need to have a different mindset. We need to understand that teachers are the makers of the different profession. And as such, they should be given due treatment. They should be treated well. There should be a good paycheck. You know, take for instance, when we look at teacher well-being, during the pandemic, we saw a lot of teachers who were crying. They were lamenting. Teachers were crying because there was absolutely no pay. For example, teachers in the private sector, there was nobody to pay them. There was nobody. They were totally left behind. So it is a question of reprioritizing education. And that is for the government. For the teachers themselves, because they are the stakeholders also in the education sector. Teachers need to understand that they all need each other. In short, I used to say that the only tool we have as teachers is ourselves. That's why in all of my social impact, I love collaboration. I love collaboration in my office. They will tell you, Joseph, can't do without collaboration. I believe that there's something in you which, if we put it together, we can change the world. So teachers need to come together. So when we come together, we will be able to put together our collective strength. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to come out with a solution that will not just be sustainable, but will be able to drive the impact and the change we are expecting to see. So I'll also say that the private sector and the government, beyond the fact that they only have to encourage teachers in the public sector. They need to look beyond that angle. Here in Nigeria, take for instance, like the pandemic, the private sectors did not just do anything to take care of its teachers, not even the government. The government did not do anything. So we need to understand that teachers in the private sector are also teaching Indian children. They are teaching Nigerian children. So it should not be that only when you are in the public sector, that's when the government can train you. That's when the government can give any kind of help to you. So I think a certain fund should be set for teachers in different countries so that teachers can access funds, have access to funding and like grants, so that this will help them take care of themselves and be able to also diversify so that they don't rely on one source. So for me, I think the different stakeholders have to come together towards ensuring that we move our education system forward. Thank you very much.
And sir, according to me, not only collaboration within teachers, uh, development in education isn't possible without collaboration at every level, be it a government, be it
That's true.
the CSRs, be it the like-minded NGOs. If we want to like speed up the education, boost up the education, and boost up the literacy, we will have to like collaborate at every level. So moving with the session now, how different is the
That's true.
digital education system from the traditional one, and what challenges did the digital education system faced during this digitization of education?
Awesome. That's so good. I would like to put that from my own personal experience. I'm a teacher in the College of Education. I train teachers in the future. So this is what now I was given a course to teach. Usually every semester I teach a particular course. So I realized that even our calendar was not giving us enough time. So what I did was that I created an online platform using the Google Classroom. So when I created the online platform, I got their emails, and for whatever content I am developing for my learners, I ensure that I also have that content, so they will have access to that, the slide, have access to a recorded version, a video session of it, and they so they have access to the transcript, the slide, and the recorded version. Now, what this actually did to them, according to them, because they gave feedback, was that even after we must have rounded off the semester, the classroom, the Google Classroom was still there. They can always have access to that learning. So all they needed to do was that they would have to download the recording and they will have to listen to my explanation over and over. And that for me was a welcome development, was an opportunity which COVID-19, which digital learning actually offered to us. So it offered our learners a way to personalize education so they could learn at their own pace. So they had the opportunity to listen to my recording over and over and over. Now, away from the traditional classroom, it would have just been the explanations and maybe the note taking. So they have access to my slides, they have access to my video recording, so which was actually a plus. So that for me is one of the opportunity digital learning has offered to education as a whole. So it has offered a personalized learning. And I want to also say that even as a teacher, as a lecturer, it makes a lot of things easier. For example, conferences that you need to pay for accommodation, you need to travel for a long distance to go and present your papers. So you just have to sit down, just like myself and you. We are just like we are having this webinar. So you just have to sit down like this, and you're presenting your papers, and you get your questions. So a lot of people were able to defend their projects. People sat down at home, defend their theses, and a lot of things were going on. And this was actually cost effective, right? So it was able to cut down a lot of expenses that educators were going into. And not just that, there was something refining which I would not fail to mention. I saw some educators, some teacher leaders be able to bring down free and bit-sized lessons to educators to access. Professional development. Some companies I know of work alerts. They were actually offering free professional trainings to teachers so that it will improve their learning. I know that recently Google had initiated a project where they had to train teachers absolutely free. They had to train teachers free. And this is the opportunity that the online learning, the digital platform, the digital learning is offering that our traditional classrooms were not offering. Because if we get the Google certificate, absolutely easy for educators to become Google certified educators just through online learning. So for me, I think the opportunity that COVID-19 has actually fastened up, geared us into digital learning is actually amazing for the educational sectors and for teachers. Thank you.
So before moving forward, I would like to have a final comment from you on one of my question, that we talk about coming together, we talk about collaborations within the like-minded NGOs, with the governments and the CSRs. But we at Global Dream think that that should be a collective mission where an individual should also help in education and literacy. So, what, according to you, how can an individual help in reimagining the education system? Sir, are you able to hear me?
I seem not to have get you. Can you just
Sure, sir.
go
So,
back
sir,
again?
we
Mm, thank you.
like most of the people talk about collaborations with the CSRs. Most of the people talk about the collaboration with government or the like-minded organizations when we talk about literacy and education. But we at Global Dream think that that should be a collective mission of everyone, where one should come to one individual should also come forward, so take one step forward for teaching children, educating them, making them literate, giving them the power of numeracy. So what, according to you, should be how is the role of an individual in reimagining the education system?
Can you just help me
Sorry.
out? Not helping is absolutely not friendly. I have
Uh-huh.
not heard a whole lot of what you said. Can you just come back again and make it brief
Sure.
this time around? Okay, thank
uh,
you. Thank you. Sorry
yeah.
about that.
So I was asking that when we talk about education, so people around us talk about collaboration with government. People around us talk about collaboration with the CSRs or the like-minded organizations. Sir, are you able to hear me?
I am struggling. I can hear this particular one now, but
Oh,
as soon
okay.
as you go
So
long,
my question to you is that how can an
okay.
individual play an important role in reimagining the education system? So I'll do one thing, that I'll post this
Okay,
question on the
if I
chat.
get that, if I okay.
I'm posting this
Yes,
question
I
on the
prefer on
chat
the
and
chat.
I'll
Please, can
present
you
it.
put it in the chat so that awesome. Yes, yes, yes. That would be wonderful, please. Okay, how can an individual help in reimagining a system? Wonderful. Okay. We need to understand that in the reimagining education. Let me look at it from this angle. First, as a parent, first, as a father, first, as an individual. The reality on ground is that today we now have a lot of emerging workforce that had not been. This is a question I need to ask myself. Are the school systems actually educating the learner to be able to fit into the present reality, into the present workforce? Then if they are not, this is what happened. Let me share my personal experience as a father. Coming out of the pandemic, my son was actually registered. I realized that there was a lockdown. My son's school could not offer any form of online learning. And even when there was a resumption, the school reopening, there was still no indication that they were going to offer anything, online learning, or they were going to transition into the online learning. And in this school was actually them. Why are you people not one? It was not shaping, it was not prepared. I was not keeping this young man here would not prepare him for the future. So I decided to reach out for private tutor. I decided to also, as a teacher, mentor him. I decided to also reach out to some educational resources. I had to use education.com. Education.com is a site that allows parents and teachers to have access to quality learning materials. So I had to subscribe for the premium version, and these people were giving me quality content, and I was also taking responsibility. So as an individual, I think we just have to begin to take responsibility. We need to shift from the blame game. We need to shift from the criticisms and begin to understand that this is our future. We need to own it, and we need to take responsibility so that we'll be able to see the change we so desire. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Very rightly said that we now need to stop the blame game and focus our duties towards
Thank
the
you.
education so that we could achieve the literacy goals in the coming future. So, sir, thank you so
Yes.
much for joining the session. It
Yes.
was a great session. And now, with this, we move towards the end
Thank
of the
you.
detox session. And to know more about Global Dream 30 Hours
Thank you
Foundational
so much.
Literacy and Numeracy Approach, please visit www.globaldream.guru, and you can also WhatsApp us on 740-840-6000. Joseph, sir, I would like to ask you to please stay back for 5 minutes after the session. We need to discuss some points with you here at the studio back in. So please stay back for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so
And
much. Thank you.
thank you, Joseph, sir, for joining the session
Thank you
and
so much.
telling us such wonderful
Thank you.
things and accepting the invitation and coming
Thank
on
you.
to Detox today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be hosted by this disruptive discussion. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It's our honor to have you here. Thank you and have a nice day, sir.